life is not measured by the number of breaths that we take, but the moments that take our breath away. Folawe Omikunle has taken my breath away with the work that she does for Teach for Nigeria. Today, I'm here with her to talk about that and more. Folawe, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Barbara.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of our conversations today, can you tell us a little bit about what Teach for Nigeria is?
Teach for Nigeria is a non-profit organization focused on addressing educational inequity. At Teach for Nigeria, we believe that every child, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their socioeconomic background, should have access to quality education. And we also understand that to really achieve that, it's a mammoth task. As in, imagine that all the millions of children who are in this country have access to quality education that allow them to fulfill their true potential. We know that that is almost impossible when you look at the schools that our kids are in. And so because we understand that, we've introduced this unique approach where we recruit outstanding young graduates to teach in really underserved poor communities. And they teach for 2 years as full-time teachers. And then what happens after that is, through the training and the support that we provide to these individuals, they then become lifelong leaders who are committed to ensuring that the issues that they identify while they're working in the school are things that they continue to work on post 2 years of teaching.
Right.
So it's a model that we adapted following the Teach for All model. The Teach For program exists in over 50 countries across the world. And so we took this approach and adapted it to our context in Nigeria.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, Folawe. What has been your experience so far?
It's been a life-changing experience for me. Like I say to people, this has been the most rewarding and fulfilling thing I've ever done. I look back at myself and how I got into this in the first place. And my background is international law and diplomacy.
Yes, I was going to say that, yeah.
And I actually never thought I was going to become an educator or a social entrepreneur. I started off, went to Babcock University, studied international law and diplomacy, and right after that I went for my master's in the UK and I studied diplomatic relations. I really wanted to become a diplomat. And I remember coming back to Nigeria and applying to join the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I waited 6 months and that didn't happen. But I wanted to work in a school after that. I didn't want to work in corporate Nigeria. And so when I joined a school in Lekki, somewhere in Lagos.
What were you doing there? When you joined the school?
When I joined the school.
Yes.
So when I joined the school, I applied to a role as school administrator.
Oh, got you, okay.
And so I joined this school that was a Montessori school.
Right.
Got into the school and I never knew that there was anything that was going to take the position of wanting to become a diplomat in my life. I fell in love with education. More so, I fell in love with the Montessori approach of education. And an experience that happened in that school is literally what changed the trajectory of my life. A little girl around 4 years old called Uduamaka was brought into the school. It's a school obviously in a highbrow area.
Right.
And this girl was orphaned and she had been adopted by a woman whose kids had relocated from Nigeria. And this girl couldn't speak a word of English. It was, the difference with her and the other kids who were in the school was like complete day and night.
Yes.
And within 6 months, her life transformed.
Yes.
And so I'm driving from Lekki, where my school was, and I'm driving to the mainland. And I just picture the kids who were on the streets, who were begging for alms and trying to clean my windscreen. And I'll imagine that, is this how their own lives would equally transform if they were in my school? And since then, it just wasn't enough. At that point, I'd gone and done the Montessori. I really, like the dream for me was I will own my own school eventually and also have a fancy school. But it just wasn't enough because I thought, these millions, these thousands of kids who are on the streets, like, who is going to ensure that they receive quality education as well? And so that's when I left there and started working with another nonprofit and eventually joined Teach for Nigeria. I joined Teach for Nigeria in 2015, left my full-time paid employment and joined the organization to launch it, and left a salary-paying job for 2 years.
Folawe, thank you for caring enough to make a change. And we need more people like you in Nigeria who are willing to be committed to making a change that will affect all our children, you know, positively. One of the things I got from you while you were speaking to me was that passion is very much your drive. How are you able to recruit like-minded people? Because, and this is with regards to teachers, because people shy away from being teachers because it's such a low-paying job. How are you able to recruit like-minded people who can continue with your legacy?
I remember around 4 years ago, like when I got into Teach for Nigeria and started, you know, like steering this idea to launch this program. And several people will come to me and say, like, forget about this. You're never going to find Nigerians, young Nigerians, who are going to give up 2 years of their lives to teach in really underserved, under-resourced
When you say 2 years of
yes,
their lives,
yes.
how does this happen? So when you recruit people to come teach, they work for the organization for 2 years. Is this like some sort of NYSC project? Is it something that is modeled after that?
So basically, like, these guys are committing 2 years to be full-time teachers. So they go through a recruitment process, they get trained, they go through a pre-service training, they go through support and in-service training, and they're placed in schools. So we have schools that we work in partnership with government schools, so public schools, where they teach as full-time teachers, teaching the same set of kids for 2 years in public primary schools. And so basically that is what they do. But just back to the question you were asking me, a lot of people were saying to us, you would never find young Nigerians who are going to give up 2 years of their lives to teach in under-resourced schools. I mean, you'd know the quality of public schools that we have. And so when we say, like, the schools are, like, really, you know, underserved and under-resourced, and they said to me, you would never find them. There's no way you'll find outstanding graduates who would go and teach there. But Barbara, I first of all, not that I didn't know. I mean, I thought about myself. And I knew that there were several Nigerians just like me who were tired of the narrative and who were looking for a platform to do something. And my conviction and my confirmation came when we launched this program. In Nigeria, when Teach for Nigeria launched, we had over 12,000 applications.
What?
I understand that we have an unemployment issue, Barbara. But
yes,
one thing that I also realized was that Nigerians were truly tired, and young people were looking for a platform where they could contribute and do more, where they could think beyond themselves and contribute. There were lots of selfless people. And from that first cohort, we had 44 teachers who started teaching in schools. And the second time we launched our recruitment, we had over 58,000 people apply. And so it's not to say that we don't have people who are willing to go above and beyond, whether they're not getting well, whether the pay is not great, like who are not doing it because of the money, who are not doing it because it's a fancy place to work in. I mean, I've been to some of the schools and they're in really bad shapes. But these guys live in the community, they stay with the kids, they stay in the classrooms, they go above and beyond just to ensure that these kids their lives are changed for forever.
That gives me hope for a better tomorrow in Nigeria. That gives me a lot of hope. Folawe, what is our major challenge in education in Nigeria, and how can we fix it?
So when people ask me these questions, like at Teach for Nigeria, we call it a jigsaw puzzle. It's so complex and it's so systemic. So for example, Nigeria currently has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world at 13.2 million. That itself is an issue. There's an issue of access. When you also look at even just the result, the kids who are in school, about 60% of the kids who are in school at primary 6 are not able to read and write, whether in English language or in their own native language. And then you go further. I don't know how much you know about the recent the news from Kaduna State, from Kwara State and Edo State, where some of the teachers were tested. And over 70% of these teachers failed and couldn't pass a primary 4 test. And so when you think about that, so we've talked about access, we've talked about the quality, learning outcomes in the classroom, we've talked about the quality of teachers. But what do you expect from a country where to go into teaching or to go into an education degree, all you need to score is 100 or 120 over 400 in JAM, and that's what gets you in to study an education program.
At the College of Education?
At the universities.
At the universities.
So you're already
that's so low, because
yes.
I'm comparing that to, you know, other courses, and I'm thinking 240, 260, and then this is 120.
So when you look at countries that are performing excellently and countries where the learning outcomes are top chart, they recruit their best and brightest, the most outstanding graduates to become a teacher or to be a teacher. You're as respected as doctors and as engineers, as lawyers. I mean, you have to be an exceptional individual to become a teacher. And until we get there, we need to fix the teaching, but leadership as well is so critical. So when you think about the funding as well, UNESCO advises 26% of every national budget, a minimum, to go to education. In Nigeria, we've been fluctuating between 6 and 7%. And so for a country where majority, over 90% of that 7% goes to overhead, where is the funding that is needed for us to build more schools, that is needed for us to train teachers, that is needed for us to recruit the right teachers and develop? We don't have it. And then when you look at the curriculum as well, it's outdated. When you look at even the leaders who are managing all the different agencies and parastatals and, you know, dealing with education, you know that the quality of leadership is so low. And there's this report that says there's no nation that can rise above its teacher quality, and there's also no nation that can rise above its civil service. And so when you look at all of that and look at leadership, and you look at all of some of the issues that I've just mentioned, there's so much that is needed to be done, but who is going to do it? And that's why a lot of times when people ask, like, why is this Teach for Nigeria thing such, you know, why are you so passionate about it? It's because I know that aside from getting people into classrooms to deal with the immediate issue, which is learning outcomes, these guys are the ones who are going to be the change agents, the leaders, 5-10 years from now. They're the guys who I'm going to be seeing at the Ministry of Education. They're the guys who I'm going to be seeing at the SUBEB. They're the guys who are going to be thinking innovation, like starting all kinds of social enterprises like Teach for Nigeria, like other, you know, other initiatives that are all driven by their experience of what they've seen and their understanding of what the issues and challenges are, and who are going to truly create the solutions for us to get out of this space. So you know, the challenges are enormous, but I think that we need to develop a critical mass of leaders who are going to take charge and own these issues and just create solutions towards solving it.
Right. You know, Folawe, I'm thinking about this laudable project you're doing, and I'm just thinking it needs a lot of funding. You know, fundraising is difficult in any country in the world, let alone Nigeria. How do you find funds to run this project?
I mean, it's interesting that you've just said, like, a lot of times, like, people ask, so what is your biggest challenge? And to be honest, it's really just, it's the funding. Since inception, like, we've had individuals who are genuinely passionate about education and social development in Nigeria who have supported us. Recently, we've started getting corporate organizations who became interested in supporting our program, and we're looking to enlist more of those corporates to support our work locally. We've also received grants from foundations in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. But to be honest, like, we just need as many people to support, whether in cash, in kind, to really help to make this happen and to make this sustainable and scalable. Because the truth is, we currently have about 200 plus fellows who are teaching as full-time teachers, but the challenge is just so massive that we need to urgently do more. And we cannot scale, we cannot do this without resources. So it's not just like, we're looking for Nigerians who just are tired of this. Like, if we fixed education in this country, every other thing will fall in place. And one of the things that I say to people is, Nigeria currently has 180 million people. Over the next 50 years, we're going to have history has not experienced what is about to happen with our population. It's going to double. And I do not think that with what we currently have, we should be sitting, like, we shouldn't be treating it as business as usual, because we don't even know. So we need to start thinking out of the box. We need to start thinking innovative, and we need to start looking at an economy that will be driven by knowledge and not one by products. We need to invest in human capital development. And to really do that, it's education and it's skills. But what are we doing? And I'm sitting here and I'm so worried and so concerned because I don't see a government that understands what that is. Because if they do, like, the budget isn't what it's going to be now. The policies and the things that we're hearing isn't what we're going to be hearing. So we need as many voices, we need as many advocates to continue to talk about this and talk about the importance of education.
Wow, Folawe. You know, we're very quick sometimes to blame the government. And yes, I agree that the government can do better and they should continue to do better with people like you. You know, Folawe, if you became the Minister of Education today, right? I mean, I can see a lot of improvement happening in Nigeria, but we neglect. So what we do, what my organization does, is we're also into education on a really small scale. And, you know, I've shared with you how we've adopted 2 schools in Ilaje. And one of the things that I hear constantly is, oh, well, it's changing now, is that parents deliberately kept their children at home some parents wanted their children to go hawk for them, because don't forget, this is a poverty-stricken area.
I mean, we're the poverty capital of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what role can parents play to ensure that their children, you know, are educated?
And this is why, you know, again, I say, like, the problem is so complex and so interwoven that, yes, parents play a role. But for parents who come from really poor backgrounds, who haven't even been able to feed a day, and that's why sometimes, like, the recent introduction of school feeding, like the meal provision in some schools, has been so beneficial to ensuring retention, even improving attendance rate in schools. It's because they're actually kids who, they go hungry the entire day. They go hungry, you know, because their parents are not able to feed them. I think and I'm going to share a story. This was before I started teaching Nigeria. And I was walking into a street somewhere in Lagos in a slum area. And I remember this parent who had a daughter and had two of her daughters with her. And one of the daughter, who obviously looked like one that should be at school, she was of school age. And I asked the mother, like, why isn't your daughter in school? And she said to me, what's the point? That her daughter who was with her, she had sent her and done everything. This woman was a pepper seller. And she had done everything to ensure that her daughter would get through school, and she went to a polytechnic, and this girl had finished, and she's sitting here to be selling the same pepper with her and couldn't get a job. And she said, so education for what? And so again, it's beyond, parents need to see the value. And I say this because I've also I've gone on school visits in the schools where I'm working at, where they said to me, the head teacher said to me, I've never met the parent of this girl, and this girl has been in this school for 3 years. And one day she walked into the school in a wrapper and said she wants to meet the auntie that has been teaching her daughter. This was because her daughter had been going home. She was hearing her saying things. They usually have this student affirmation, student vision, and things that they say. And she was hearing her daughter saying this, and she had never heard it. So the fact and the truth of the matter is, if parents do not see the value, if it's not translating to any, they wouldn't be encouraged to send their kids. It's like, just go and talk or go and learn one skill because we don't see it. And that's why it's not just to have kids go to school, but it's to ensure that the education they're receiving whilst they're in the school is quality education. And that way, parents will be inspired. They will even send their neighbors' children to go there, because this one that, you know, this child is saying, I want my child to say it as well, you know. So I think that is one. But I think another thing in this country is, the value system has gradually eroded, if not even more. So where are values? And I think those things were taught at home. You know, being honest, being respectful, like some of those values that have helped to build our nation, those values were instilled from home. You were taught by, it was a village. By the time you go on the street, your neighbor will correct you. You before you get home. You know what I mean? We're seeing that just fade off from our society. And I think that is also part of education, which is where the parents are really they should be the ones instilling those values. And I think a lot of times there's some parents who leave that responsibility even to school. So they think that or the housemaids. So that's one of the areas that I think parents need to to focus on. And also the reinforcement. So yes, they're teaching your kids in school, but you should take interest, and you should also want to find out what they're teaching. How can you reinforce it? You know, when they're at home during playtime, how can you ensure that they're still learning? You know, so parents need to be educated as well on being parenting. There's a mentor of mine who says, everybody can have children, but not everybody can be a good parent. And so I think there's also a lot of advocacy that needs to happen around there. People need to take interest. PTAs in school need to go beyond just, you know, talking about how to raise the levies and how to raise funds for schools or things like that. But they also need to look at how to equip and involve parents in their own responsibility and role in education.
I agree with you. Now, Folawe, in Ogun State right now, everybody's singing your high praises because there's been a lot of change in the educational sector. Is this something we're going to be seeing in other states across Nigeria?
It will be my joy to see this work scale and expand across all of the states. And just as you said, like, you know, Ogun State is very exciting what we're seeing there, and I'm always grateful to Ogun State government for their support in helping Teach for Nigeria to see what is even possible. Like, if not for Ogun State, we probably wouldn't have scaled or expanded to any other states that we're in. But this is definitely something that I think can happen and can be replicated across states. But there is a level of the willingness of the leadership of whichever state that needs to be, that we need to partner with for our work to be successful.
Right.
So if we don't have the buy-in of government, if we don't have the support of government, there's no way that the work will be successful. So a lot of times I say to people, we're not coming to challenge you. We're not competing. We're coming to complement your effort. Because the truth is, government alone cannot do it. The challenge that we're facing requires all Nigerians, requires collective effort for us to say we have a problem in front of us. This is an urgent issue. This is a state of crisis, a state of emergency. And we all need to find ways. There are different ways that we can all plug in. And I think government needs to be open to that. It's not bashing them, but it's saying, how can we all together join forces to make this, to make this work? And that's what I preach to government, say to them, like, nobody is trying to air your dirty laundry. We're just saying, let us complement your effort. Because we know you have the best interest of your state at heart. And we also just want to support you and make sure that becomes your reality.
Yes. Folawe, you're the CEO for Teach for Nigeria, and I want us to go a little bit lighter, just a shade lighter. You're a power woman, you're a powerful woman, and you're very passionate, you're very driven. Do you consider yourself a feminist? Or what does feminism mean to you?
Thank you. So a lot of times, like, I hear, people's definition of feminism. My own definition of feminism really is, I think women should have this equal opportunity as men. I think that if a man is being paid a certain amount for a particular role, and a woman gets into that same position, I think that woman should also be paid the same thing. So that's one. The second one is, I think women should equally have the same opportunities to sit in at the table, on boards, and leading as well as men. I think before anything is considered, merit should be considered. If a woman has, if a woman has the abilities or the capacity to lead, I feel like she should be considered the same way any other, like, it shouldn't be by sex, it shouldn't be considered by by gender, but it should be considered by what she's bringing, her ability. And so for me, that's what feminism is. It's about equality of gender, and that's what it is. So when a lot of people ask me, I ask them, what is your own definition of feminism? Now, that is my own, and I just think that women and men should have access to equal opportunities.
I'm on the same page with you on that. Folawe, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Before we go away, I want to ask you this. What's next for you?
So when I think about my journey and I think about how I've come into this work, I think a lot of times, like, I say to people, like, I'm God-driven and God-led. And a lot of times, like, things have just happened and sort of, and the way it has happened, like, this vision drops in my palm and it just unfolds, and God makes provisions for it. So for me, when I think of next step, a lot of times people prophesy, oh, you're going to work in government, you're going to end up in politics. I don't know what, but I feel like I've been put in this world to serve. And if serving for me is, if serving is to work, towards reaching more, whether through government, whether through a larger platform, like, I'm happy, but my life will continue to impact and will continue to ensure that this vision of quality education, children fulfilling their full potential, children thriving, and every human being just being their own being, like, being the best version of themselves, I feel like that's what my life is always going to focus on. So I don't know what that is. I haven't fully defined it yet, but I know that it's always going to be a journey of being a servant leader.
And I'm going to close by saying, with God, all things are possible. Folawe, before we let you go away, we have a little gift for you. Okay? Just to say thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
For being so passionate.
Thank you.
So passionate enough to impact our society.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. Can I hug you?
Sure.